Don't let this happen to you. Make sure that you are doing things properly, taking the right steps to avoid your account getting crushed and shut down. Hey, it's Don. Today we're going to talk about a very important aspect of what we do as a reseller. Now, I just purchased this stack here of 45s. I've got a few PSP games and a very nice Kate Greenaway sterling pin here that I paid $3 for. The most important aspect of this is keeping proper records and having the receipts to back up what you have. You've got to be able to keep a receipt for stuff like this. Now, I'm just buying used items here, antiques and things like that. I'm not buying super expensive, valuable items that you'll have to have maybe possibly more information with. I can show where I bought it. I can show when I bought it. I can show where the money came from. It shows it's coming from one of my personal business bank accounts for everything that I bought. I didn't spend very much on this one. This was $24.30, and I got a $3 pin out of it that should get me about $45 to $57.50-ish on that. I got a couple PSP games. I spent $1 a piece on $3 for these. Should get me about $22, $24 back. And then I got, I believe, 45 records here. Now, it may not seem like a whole bunch, but there's about $600 or so in 45s here with this purchase. Now, for items like this, these are used items. There isn't a manufacturer of these available, and it hasn't been for many years. I know they still make records and things, but the ones that I have here, the labels are long since defunct in the whole works. The performers, most of them aren't even alive anymore at this point either. So this is all stuff that would be considered vintage collectible. I don't really need a invoice or anything else like that. Now, if you're selling many other items like new old stock, stuff you'd run into, even clothing lines and things like that, many times if you're dealing in volume, you will have to be able to produce a legal documented invoice of some sort that shows that you legally acquired them in bulk, if they're like NOS especially, or something from a very specific company, to be able to sell them on sites. There's a whole program called the Vero program at eBay. I'll include a link down in the description box if you'd like to check that page out as well. I would honestly recommend every single reseller out there check that out. Now, we do sell valuable items into the thousands, but whenever I'm purchasing something of value, I, one, know who I'm buying from. I know the people usually every single time. If I haven't known them before, I really investigate where they came from, what the items are. Usually we'll meet them in a public place locally here in front of the police station. If they're not willing to meet there, that's usually a sign that I don't want to deal with them. Now, these areas at police stations, fire departments, and places like that are usually videoed the whole time as well. And that's another reason why if someone doesn't want to meet there, chances are you don't want to meet them in the first place. Anybody that's not willing to meet you in a safe place that's recorded for their safety as well as yours, I don't deal with. So I'm always very cautious on that. I don't buy from strangers valuable items and things along that line either. I go by the old school rules of what basically a pawn shop would do in some cases on things like this too. Hold on to it for a little while, make sure there wasn't anything fishy going on. And when in doubt, I don't buy it. I just don't mess with those sorts of things. This is my account. This is what pays much of our bills, so I don't risk any factors in it. Now, even if for some odd reason none of that's a problem or you don't really care about all that kind of stuff, you still have to be able to produce proof in form of receipts and verifiable means that you bought those items to the IRS so you can account for your purchases, your cost of goods sold. So they pretty much tie hand in hand. Get the receipts to start off with, again, because you have to report them anyway on your taxes. You've got to show what you purchased. You've got to explain your expenses, and the best way, obviously, is to have a receipt. Now, a lot of questions I get are, what do you do if you're buying from a garage sale or something like that? You can just order a pad of receipts off of Amazon. You can buy them locally. Even Walmart's carry some of those as well. And write out a receipt for the place you're at. If you're going to a garage sale, chances are there's a street and an address number. You can write that down on there. A lot of times the folks running them may not want to sign or give any information, but that should be enough. And if you want to be extra careful, just take a picture of it showing the garage sale running at that street address. If anybody has any questions about where that actual address is, you can Google it. You can Google the street view of that house and get the address if you really have to. If it's something very valuable, that's what I would do. Usually what I'll do is just ask. If I fill the receipt out, will you please sign it just for tax purposes? End of story. That's all you really got to do. You have to have some form of documentation. Now, if you're driving around and going to garage sales as well, you should be tracking and writing down your mileage, so hopefully you have some form of proof to back up to that you were out that day, that you were doing something as well. So this is all documentation that helps legitimize your business. You don't want to be some fly-by-night reseller. If you want to do this for a living for the rest of your life, or at least the near foreseeable future, you've got to do it properly and take care of records and documentation on everything that you do. Now, if you're like us and don't do a traditional inventory, you're worrying so much more about the receipts. Those are the driving factor because you're going to write it down as a cash expense the day you buy it. There's nothing better to have in these cases than a receipt, even if you have to write it out yourself. And obviously there's nothing wrong with including a picture of it in a document or something like that. We use Microsoft Office to do all of our taxes and tracking and all the stuff, and it's very easy to embed a photo of a place, where you're at, where you bought it, and keep a copy of this. You can even get digital copies and scan your receipts, which is what most big businesses do. They keep a digital copy of it as well as the hard copy of the receipts. You have to keep all this stuff. You have to keep them for multiple years. So make sure from the start, the minute you're going into business, that you start keeping track of every dime that you spend. It's key. It's important. It's one of the best ways to keep yourself out of trouble. With a lot of the retail theft and things like that going around right now, there's extra precautions being taken by government agencies and platforms to assure that the items on the platform weren't stolen as well. So that's another thing you really need to be worried about, is making sure you're buying from reputable people. People that you can at least verify who they are, at least meet them in a public space, so it's not some shady back alley kind of transaction. I would never ever recommend that. It's risky. You could get robbed. Who knows what could happen? It's not worth the hassle. If you want this to be your business as well and have a good relationship with banks and things like that that can help you bankroll investments and purchases, you've got to be on the up and up. You've got to show the amount of money that you're making. You've got to be honest about it. The more revenue you can declare, the better you are off to a bank or to any place like that, investors, or if you want to go into wholesale. You want to show that you can do volume. That is key. That is essential. That is a good way to show that your business is doing well for future needs. You might just be now a reseller, but you may move into wholesale. You may come up with some idea. You may find a niche, and you may need stuff like this. So there's no reason to be dishonest. There's no need to risk your business because you don't have the proper paperwork. You could be booted off a site very, very easily. Everybody who's done Amazon knows that they can lock you out and gate you in a category anytime they see fit. If you don't have the documentation, if you're selling things that you technically don't have the permission to sell or legally have the right to sell, those are the types of things that will get you in trouble. There's no reason on earth whatsoever to worry about short-term gains over long-term gains. I would rather be in it for the long run. I would rather be the turtle instead of the hare and get my way there steady all the way across than dive up there or have something happen and blow it at the last minute. So pay attention to the long-term game. There's never a sense in buying something shady or messing around with things like that. Having the proper documentation is really what's going to set you apart and keep you safe on these platforms out there. And this isn't just for one specific platform. This goes for them all. I've personally known people who have been booted off most all of the platforms out there for one reason or another. I always take those as examples of things to never do. So just be careful when you're out there. If you value your business, follow the rules to the T. If you don't know those rules, you need to look them up on the site. But anyway, that's what I have for you today. Hopefully that gives you some ideas, some thoughts. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button down below. You can also hit the bell icon to be notified if I post new content or go live. Subscribe and tell all your friends.
It's not always easy being the middle kid. You know, too little to be the big kid, too big to be the little kid. Cabbage Patch toddler kids. Not as big as older Cabbage Patch kids, not as little as Cabbage Patch babies.
Let me see my bag. Oh, she's cute. She's Sarah Beth.
Cabbage Patch toddler kids. Being in the middle means being in the middle of fun. Each sold separately from Coleco.